and we're all dedicated to it.
2 1 seeds facing each other. It's going to be a heck of a battle.
Cody Bellinger headed into the Dodger bullpen. Kershaw still cruising. Dodgers with a 4-run bottom of the 5th lead 6-1. Betts sends a fly ball to right field. It's gone! And the Dodgers win game 1.
Ooh, the World Series is underway. LA up by 1. I'm wearing these colors by accident. I'm from the East Coast, y'all. What's going on? Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman. I'm Molly Karen Rose, MLB Insider. Jeff Passan. I'm going to get to you in just a moment. Your Cowboys? They're a hot mess right now. I don't know if you've heard, but the players have spoken out, and they're saying the coaching staff is totally unprepared. We will be talking about that in just a moment.
Yeah.
But
as
first, I need
Ryan
to
Clark
Jeff
said, by the way, Dak is gone for like 5 minutes. The whole thing falls apart.
Mm-hmm. Hey, that man. All right, guys. We're focused on baseball, though, Jeff. Clayton Kershaw carved through the Tampa Bay lineup, retiring 17 of the final 18 batters he faced and leading LA to an 8-3 victory in the World Series Game 1. Over 6 innings, Kershaw allowed 2 hits, 1 walk, and struck out 8 hitters. Max Kellerman, you love baseball. I know you're excited we're talking about it, and you're up first. How does Kershaw silence his critics? Talk to me.
Don't make me be this guy today. You're going to make me be this guy today. Mm-hmm. He can't do it in one World Series. I'm sorry. He can get the monkey off his back in a way, but he can't do it in just one World Series. Understand, Clayton Kershaw has the lowest ERA ever. Like, you have to go back to the dead ball era. In the modern era of all starting pitchers, he has the lowest career ERA. You know what that means? He's the best. Really, it's shorthand. You could look. The quality of his prime, of his very best, matches up with the elite primes like Sandy Koufax or Pedro Martinez or anyone you want to mention. Except he had more longevity at a high level than those guys did. And he's still going. He should be going down as the greatest starting pitcher ever. He's not. Why? Look, he goes from a 2.43 all-time greatest ERA in the regular season. It balloons in the postseason, and in each successive divisional series, the deeper you go, it got higher. Finally, because he pitched 6 innings with a run last night, his World Series ERA, still over 4.5, is a little bit lower than his NLCS ERA, which is close to 5. Right? Let me tell you how to think about Clayton Kershaw, and I'm so glad he pitched well. I don't have to criticize him for the way he pitched yesterday, and because of this, the Dodgers have a chance to win the World Series. Koufax won 4, but really 2 as a stud ace. Valenzuela won 1, Hershiser won 1, because they were all big under pressure. Great World Series pitchers. The Dodgers haven't won in this era so far because their ace hasn't been that. But let me tell you how to think of Kershaw. He's Peyton Manning. Did Peyton Manning silence the critics? Well, in a way, yes, because he wound up winning 2 Super Bowls and 1 as a stud still, right? So he silenced the critics in the sense that he couldn't win it all. He couldn't win the big game. He did. But who rates Peyton Manning the greatest quarterback of all time? No one. And he was. In the regular season, Peyton Manning was probably the best player who ever lived. But in those serious football conversations about the greatest quarterbacks ever, no one ever brings up Peyton Manning anymore because the body of work, when it mattered most, didn't justify it. He got the monkey off his back with those Super Bowls, but it doesn't erase all the futility that led up to it. And I'm afraid at this moment, the same is true with Clayton Kershaw. I don't think that all gets undone with 1 or 2 great World Series games pitched. And it was an excellent game last night.
Well, the good news that I'm going to provide Jeff Passan is that I'm not going to try to be the expert here and go on that long soliloquy. I don't need to do that. I'll leave that to him. You can't. You're not, but it's all right. At the bottom, you're actually not. But here's the reality: you're really not. In the end, excuse me. A lot of people know baseball. I just said you're not the expert. I didn't say you don't know baseball. Here's the deal. The reality is, there you go. Thank you. Here's the point of the matter. Kershaw has had exceptional World Series or postseason performances. Now, his ERA is double in the postseason than it was in the regular season. So you're not wrong in that regard. But it's not like what we saw last night we've never seen before. He performed against the Brewers, had a 13 strikeout performance. He performed against the Astros in the World Series, had an 11 strikeout performance. He's had games. Here's where I differ from you, Max, and it's only in this one thing. If this were a Game 7, with a championship on the line, obviously, because that's what a Game 7 brings, and you perform like that, I think that will go a long way towards eradicating all of those demons that have haunted him. The notion that, excuse me, one postseason is not going to do it, I beg to differ. That's the only place you and I disagree. I'm saying that it's moments that count. Game 1 is not Game 7. So you showing up in the World Series and performing in Game 1, even though that's a big deal, still, it ain't Game 7. But if this were Game 7, or if that 11 strikeout performance against the Astros or the 13 strikeout performance against Milwaukee in the postseason that I brought up, if that were a Game 7, even though that's just one postseason, excuse me, think about what it did for Bumgarner and the way he performed. Now, obviously, it wasn't just one game. He did it over several games and an entire postseason. I totally get it. But what I'm saying is, when he showed up on short rest in a Game 7 and performed the way that he performed, that's what resonated with us. We'll hold on to that. And I think if Kershaw does something like that in a Game 7, I think people will view him entirely differently. Floor is yours, Jeff.
May I just start by saying, God forbid I'm ever compared to Peyton Manning in a negative way. Like, let's be real here. If you end up being compared to Peyton Manning, Max, and you're trying to frame it like that's a bad thing, your argument's starting off in a really bad place here. Now, I'm also curious, and you can answer this after I'm done talking here. I'm also curious what the threshold is going to be for you to get off of the Clayton Kershaw can't pitch in October narrative that has pervaded the baseball world. And in some regards fairly, in some regards understandably, but it's almost like if he can't do it this postseason, if he can't do it next postseason, when can he do it? What's the threshold? Where's the point where you're going to start saying Clayton Kershaw is a big game pitcher? Because like Stephen A. said, there are some examples where Clayton Kershaw has pitched extraordinarily well in October. There's also an important point, though, that I think needs to be made. And it was illustrated last night, Max. Clayton Kershaw came out after only 78 pitches last night. You look at yourself and you say, 78 pitches, what kind of ace gets pulled after 78 pitches? What kind of stud goes out after 78 pitches? He should be going out there. He should be throwing a complete game. He should be, all these things. That's fair. That's reasonable. But there are limitations that starting pitchers have at this point in the playoffs. You are facing lineups typically in the World Series that are so good, that grind you down so much, that, you know what? A 6-inning start in modern baseball is considered pretty good. Mm-hmm. And when you go look back at the foibles of Clayton Kershaw, Max, the ones that have ballooned his ERA into the 4s over the course of history in the postseason, most of the damage has been done in the 7th inning because his managers had that trust in him, had that faith in him, sent him back out there maybe when he shouldn't have gone out there. So if you want to blame Clayton Kershaw for giving up those hits, those runs, those home runs, all the things that happened in those innings, I get it. He did. But in reality, I think some of what happened to him in October is due to those managers as well, not recognizing that, maybe we shouldn't rely on this guy quite so much. Maybe those 18 runs he gave up in the 7th inning over 7 bad games. You take those off the ERA, Max, all of a sudden it's 3.33, and that's not career good, but it's not nearly as bad
Jeff,
as
let me
been.
take your points 1, 2, 3 in a row, because I think you have one that sounds good but isn't, one that is good and one that isn't. Okay, the first one. Is it a bad thing to be compared to Peyton Manning? No, of course, but it's a given. Isn't it a given that Clayton Kershaw is one of the best pitchers who ever lived, right? That's a given. But I'll compare him to someone else. You'll be like, oh, damning him with, or not damning him with faint praise, the